While everyone else is asking, "So, what do you do?" there's someone standing there silently calculating the fastest escape route from this conversation. Not because they're shy, not because they're rude, but because this entire interaction feels fake, empty, draining. Psychologists have been quietly studying people like this for years, and what they've discovered is not what you think. You know them. Maybe you are them. The person who dreads networking events, the one who skips the after-work drinks, the one who would genuinely rather stay home and read than go to yet another birthday where you stand around discussing the weather and traffic for 3 hours straight. These are the small talk avoiders, and their brains might actually be wired differently than those who seem to thrive on casual chit-chat. Stay with me, because what we're about to uncover goes way deeper than introverts hate people. In fact, some of the people who despise small talk are incredibly social, just not like that. Here's the thing. When most people enter a social situation, they feel a subtle pressure to keep things light. Don't get too deep, don't be weird, don't make it awkward. So they pull out the usual scripts: work, the weather, what show they're watching. If you're someone who hates small talk, your brain reacts to these scripts like a pop-up ad: intrusive, repetitive, and instantly dismissed. Psychologists have a name for this mismatch between the social script and internal preference: need for authenticity. It's part of a broader trait cluster, often connected to high openness, low self-monitoring, and sometimes high sensitivity. But this isn't just about personality. It's a defense mechanism against something that feels more threatening than silence: inauthentic connection. Think about it. For the person who hates small talk, talking about the weather isn't just boring. It feels like lying with your mouth open. Their internal experience is, we are both pretending this matters, and we both know it doesn't. That dissonance is exhausting. It's like forcing your brain to run a program it wasn't designed to run, and it burns energy. This is where we have to separate two completely different experiences that often get lumped together. Type 1, the socially anxious avoider. These people avoid small talk because it makes them nervous. They fear saying the wrong thing, being judged, or not knowing how to keep the conversation going. Small talk is stressful because it feels like a performance they're not good at. Type 2, the depth seeker. These people avoid small talk not because they're bad at it, but because they find it pointless. They can do it. They often do it quite well when required. But inside, they're thinking, why are we wasting emotional energy on this? They crave conversations about ideas, values, experiences, and meaning, not the humidity level. The key psychological difference: the socially anxious avoider is blocked by fear. The depth seeker is blocked by boredom. One is thinking, I'm scared I'll mess this up. The other is thinking, this is already messed up because it's fake. Here's where it gets interesting. Research on self-monitoring, our tendency to adjust our behavior based on social context, shows that low self-monitors are far more likely to dislike small talk. High self-monitors are the social chameleons. They can talk about anything with anyone, tailor their persona to the situation, and often enjoy the dance. Low self-monitors, on the other hand, tend to behave more consistently across contexts. They don't love playing a role. They want their outer behavior to match their inner state. Small talk demands the opposite. It says, regardless of what you're actually thinking or feeling, say the safe, socially approved thing instead. For low self-monitors, that feels like wearing someone else's face. But why would a brain work this way? One answer lies in sensitivity. Some people have nervous systems that are more reactive to stimulation. Psychologists call this sensory processing sensitivity, and it's strongly linked to what is popularly called highly sensitive people. These individuals notice more details, process more deeply, and are more affected by emotional nuance. In a loud room full of shallow conversations, their system is taking in everything: tone shifts, micro-expressions, background noise, subtle tension. So when someone says crazy weather, their brain is already 5 layers deeper. You sound stressed. You keep glancing at the door. You're holding your drink like a shield. Are you okay? But the social script doesn't allow them to ask that. So instead, they're trapped. Their perception is deep, but the conversation must stay shallow. That mismatch feels like suffocation. Here's the plot twist. People who hate small talk might actually be better at real connection than those who enjoy it. Not better as in superior, but better as in more attuned to emotional undercurrents, more willing to be vulnerable, and more interested in understanding who you actually are. These are the people who, once you get past the awkward surface, will ask you the questions you didn't realize you were desperate to be asked. But before we romanticize this, there's a cost. Humans are wired for belonging. We evolved in groups where casual, low-stakes interactions served an important function. They maintained social bonds. In early tribes, not every conversation could be a deep dive into your existential fears. You needed ways to signal goodwill, safety, and familiarity without constantly exposing your inner world. Small talk became the social lubricant that kept groups from grinding against each other. So, from a social survival perspective, small talk isn't meaningless. It's an ancient protocol. I see you. You see me. We're safe. We're part of the same group. People who hate small talk aren't broken, but they are opting out of one of the default mechanisms their species uses for bonding. And that has consequences. Studies on weak ties, casual acquaintances like your barista, co-worker, neighbor, show that small interactions with these people improve mood and well-being. Brief chats, even about nothing important, create tiny hits of social connection. Over time, these micro moments contribute to a sense of belonging. When you aggressively avoid small talk with everyone, you also avoid these little injections of "I exist in a community." So we're left with a paradox. People who hate small talk often crave deep connection more than anyone. They want authenticity, vulnerability, depth. But the path society usually takes to get there is paved with small talk. You don't jump from "hi" to "tell me about your deepest childhood wound" in one move. For most people, that's not intimacy. It's emotional whiplash. This creates what we could call the intimacy paradox of depth seekers. They want the end state, real conversations, real relationships, but despise the typical process used to get there, light, gradual, safe topics. It's like wanting to get in shape but hating every form of exercise that exists. Now layer in social norms. Most cultures treat small talk as polite. Not engaging in it or trying to skip ahead to heavier topics can come across as rude, intense, or inappropriate. So the small talk hater faces a choice: conform and feel drained, or refuse and risk being misjudged. Neither option feels great. Underneath all of this is a deeper psychological theme: tolerance for ambiguity and emotional risk. Small talk is emotionally low risk, but also low reward. Deep talk is high risk, high reward. People who hate small talk are often more willing to face the emotional risk if it means they can skip the low reward stage. But the people around them may not be. Imagine a social slider from 0 to 10. 0 is silence, 3 is small talk, 7 is personal talk, 10 is deep vulnerability. Most people move gradually: 0, 3, 5, 7, maybe 10. The small talk hater wants to go 0, 7 immediately. "Hi, nice to meet you." So what do you think happens after we die? For them, that's not weird, that's honest. For everyone else, that's a jump scare. Now let's talk about cognitive style. There is evidence that people who prefer abstract, introspective, or intellectual thinking are more likely to find everyday social scripts boring. Their internal world is constantly running complex simulations, analyzing ideas, questioning assumptions, imagining alternative realities. Dropping into a conversation about traffic feels like downshifting from a high-speed engine to neutral. They're not snobs. They're just used to being mentally elsewhere. For some, this links to introversion, which is about where you get your energy. Introverts recharge alone and tend to find constant interaction draining. But it's not that simple. Many extroverts also hate small talk. They love being around people, they crave energy, but they want that energy from laughter, shared stories, group activities, not from repetitive pleasantries. So "I hate small talk" doesn't neatly equal "I'm an introvert." It often equals "I'm selectively social." Here's something most people don't realize. When someone says "I hate small talk," they might actually be saying, "I don't feel safe being myself in the way society expects me to socialize." Small talk is a script, and scripts are comfortable only when they fit. For someone whose identity is built around authenticity, curiosity, and depth, being forced into a script feels like self-abandonment. That's why it can be so viscerally uncomfortable. And yet, for people wired differently, deep conversations with strangers feel unsafe. Small talk is the armor. It gives time to test the other person's warmth and intentions without exposing tender parts of oneself. From that perspective, depth seekers can feel confrontational without meaning to. Asking big questions too soon can trigger the other person's defenses. Why are you asking me this? We just met. So whose psychology is right? The answer is neither, or both. People who enjoy small talk aren't shallow. They're attuned to social norms and find comfort in gentle connection. They build trust slowly, and for them, the slow build is part of intimacy. People who hate small talk aren't rude. They're often idealists about connection. They find it painful to hover on the surface when they know there's an entire universe inside the person they're speaking to. Research on meaningful conversation shows that people underestimate how much others actually enjoy deeper talk. In studies where strangers are instructed to skip small talk and discuss meaningful topics, both people report liking each other more than they expected. The catch? Left to their own devices, most people don't choose this. They're afraid it will be awkward. The small talk hater feels this gap acutely. They see what's possible and are frustrated that no one wants to go there. Here's another layer: time and cognitive bandwidth. Small talk demands constant micro decisions: when to nod, when to laugh, when to agree, how to keep the topic going. For some brains, especially neurodivergent ones like autistic or ADHD individuals, these micro demands are exhausting. They prefer direct, content-rich exchanges because there's less ambiguity. Tell me what you mean, tell me what you care about. Don't make me decode your social dance while pretending I'm enjoying this. In that sense, hating small talk can sometimes be less about depth and more about processing style. In straightforward conversations, the rules are clearer. In small talk, the rules are subtle, implicit, and constantly shifting. So, are people who hate small talk happier? That depends on what they do with that dislike. On one hand, people who structure their social lives around fewer but deeper relationships often report high levels of satisfaction. They're not spread thin across dozens of acquaintances. They invest heavily in a small number of friends or partners, and this can create strong, resilient bonds. They're not drained by constant light interaction. They're fulfilled by intense, meaningful ones. On the other hand, completely opting out of casual interaction can lead to loneliness and social isolation. If you refuse to engage in any small talk, you might never get to the point where deep talk becomes possible. You might be perceived as distant, cold, or uninterested, even when you're desperate for connection. The same research that praises deep conversation also shows that regular, low-stakes social contact improves overall well-being. The sweet spot seems to be balance, tolerating small talk as a gateway while intentionally seeking opportunities for depth when the conditions feel right. This is the uncomfortable truth. Many people who think they hate people actually just hate the way people are taught to interact. They don't dislike humans, they dislike human autopilot, the scripted, safe, repetitive mode that so many of us slip into because we're afraid of being judged. But if you put these same small talk haters in a context where depth is normalized, late night conversations, long walks, one-on-one dinners, therapy sessions, book clubs, they light up. They become animated, engaged. They don't hate socializing. They hate the version of socializing that feels like acting. So what does the psychology actually tell us? People who hate small talk aren't necessarily antisocial, anxious, or arrogant. Many of them simply have a high need for authenticity, a preference for meaningful, content-rich conversation, lower self-monitoring, making scripts feel fake sensitive nervous systems that get overwhelmed by shallow, noisy environments, cognitive styles that favor big ideas over small details. Their brains prioritize depth over breadth, quality over quantity, truth over smoothness. The problem starts when either side thinks their way is superior. When small talk lovers label depth seekers as awkward, intense, or too much. When depth seekers write off everyone who enjoys light conversation as superficial or fake. Because here's the thing nobody wants to admit. We're all using conversation to regulate our own emotional comfort. Some people use small talk to slowly warm up. Others use big talk to cut through the awkwardness. Both groups are just trying to feel less alone. If you're someone who hates small talk, the challenge isn't to suddenly enjoy it. The challenge is to understand what it's doing for other people and what it's costing you to reject it completely. True freedom isn't automatically refusing superficial conversation. It's being able to choose when to tolerate it as a bridge to something deeper and when to step away because it genuinely isn't serving you. The hardest question. If you knew that starting with small talk for 5 minutes would reliably open the door to the kind of deep, honest conversation you crave, would you still refuse to do it? If the answer is yes, then you're prioritizing your immediate comfort over your long-term desire for connection. If the answer is no, then you've just discovered that small talk, for you, might be a tool rather than an enemy. So, are you someone who truly hates small talk, or someone who just hasn't experienced what it can lead to when handled differently? Maybe the real upgrade isn't forcing yourself to love the phrase crazy weather, right? It might be gently redirecting, taking the tiny awkward risk of moving the conversation one level deeper. Instead of staying at traffic and sports, asking what's been the best part of your week? What are you excited about lately? If you could change something about your life right now, what would it be? Still simple, still safe, but closer to real. Because here's what the psychology actually suggests. People who hate small talk aren't worse at connection. If anything, they might be carrying the blueprint for the kind of conversations more of us secretly want. The ones where we stop performing and start being. The ones where we leave feeling less alone, not more. The only question is whether they and the rest of us are willing to endure a few minutes of mild awkwardness to get there. So, do you genuinely hate small talk, or are you just craving something real and haven't been given permission to ask for it yet? Let me know in the comments. Unless, of course, talking about your feelings in public is a little too big talk for now. And if you want to go deeper into the psychology behind how we connect, communicate, and perform in social settings, don't forget to subscribe or click join to support the channel. It is genuinely appreciated. And check out the next video if you want your social habits, from ghosting to oversharing, explained simply.